talking from a change management and a training perspective, what is it that we need to consider and be cognizant of when we're actually sort of dealing with our user community. So, what I put up here is quite simple, really. We need to be considering in all aspects of an ERP implementation or ERP program about your users, and particularly what they're thinking, how they're feeling, and also be aware to understand how they're acting and why they're acting in a certain way. I will say, been involved in change management for almost 25 years, we've been exposed to many methodologies about, here's how you can deliver change. And I always think to myself, these are great. You've got communication approaches, stakeholder engagement approaches, leadership engagement approaches, training, obviously a key part of it. But at the end of the day, these are all just tools. Yeah. And if you don't consider the user community when you're applying those tools, then obviously you're not going to get the desired results. So, we need to make sure we have the right tools, right time for the users, because we're expecting them to behave and operate differently in the future. Yeah. And so we cannot just consider that it will happen. If we don't invest the time in understanding how people perceive and understand and respond to change, then how can we expect them to achieve the outcomes that we want? Yeah. So we need to adapt. So we need to think about understanding people's motivations, what drives them to react in certain ways and respond. We need to understand the impact of any change. So, how hard things will be in the future for them, right? So if things are really going to be really a lot harder in the future in certain areas, their motivation to change is going to be quite low. So you need to think about how you can address that, particularly if that area is going to be key to your success. On the right hand side here, we've some people may have heard of a scholar, a writer, Peter Block. He's written quite a few books around change management, and one in particular around stewardship. And he writes about how organizations respond to change and how leaders can support change in particular. And he talked about 4 different types here. So we talk about the victim, the cynic, the bystander, and the navigator. And if I think about when I'm in my own work and we're going through change, and I think about how people are responding and reacting, I can quite quickly, considering these 4 types, think about, I know where Nick is at the moment in terms of this change. And if I know where Nick is in terms of this change, I know how I maybe need to interact with Nick and how I need to deal with Nick in terms of communications and what training they're going to need. So just to elaborate that on a bit more. So victim, it's quite a strong word, but some of the things you might notice for a victim, they may appear frustrated or angry with an upcoming change. They might isolate themselves from change activities. They might actually be actively resisting change. And the thinking, the kind of thoughts they're having is, typically, why can't things stay the way they are? I liked the way things were. I can't believe this is happening. I didn't have any choice or control in this. So if you quite often you hear those things. So that's a victim. And understanding, those kind of and noticing those things, understanding why is key in terms of helping shaping your change. The next one, the cynic, this is that people be expressing doubt, feeling that it's futile effort, this is never going to work. I doubt this will improve anything. What were they thinking? All these kind of things as well. And again, if you start to sort of hear these things, people talk about it, but in the office and people drop comments in like that, you can start to think about, well, actually, if I just send them a communication about this is going to be great and don't you look forward to the future, you can kind of understand that where they are at the moment, that's not going to land particularly well, and you need to tailor that communication to that group or that individual in order to help buy them in. So the next one is around the bystander, and what I will say about the cynics, obviously from a change management and training perspective, is that cynics are typically quite vocal and quite energetic, but often in their negative views. And this, again, is something that you can use to your benefit in a change program or an ERP program, because these are people, if you can convince them that actually this is good and it is going to work, then they can sort of redirect that energy to help you achieve your goals in the change and training. I won't go too long, but the bystanders, these are often people who are late to get involved. They kind of watch from the sidelines. They don't want to commit to anything. They're undecided. Sometimes they'll think, actually, this probably might not happen, so why should I put the effort in? I've seen it before, and I don't really see the benefits, or they don't have control. So these are people that, again, if understanding why they're like that. We talk about later in this webinar, we'll talk about things like engagement, but these are people that you need to consider how you can engage them in the program. They may have a lot of experience. The reason the bystanders is they've seen it in the past, but they just don't want to get involved again. You can use that in the right way. And then the final one to talk about is the navigators. And this was where you want everyone really to be, is you want people, they explore the benefits, they think about, look at ways of how they can support the change. These are people often come up with ideas, why don't we do a drop-in session for this, or we need to communicate with this group. And they also can assist you in helping other people come on that journey as well. So again, this is where we want people to be. And I wanted to introduce you to that because I think in every situation, and I think whether this is at work or social or anything, I think if you were to introduce some kind of change, there will be some people that will respond in each of these different ways. And so the purpose of mentioning this is you cannot apply a broad, here's my change methodology, here's what I'm going to do, and this will work. It will work maybe for a portion of the people, those few navigators that you have from the start, but it will not address everyone's concerns and fears. I think this thing, we just wanted to show this really, and it's this is a change curve. People would have seen various different forms of this before. The initial shock of understanding what the change is happening, the disbelief and the denial, the frustration. And when you think actually of some of those types that I've just put in there, you could probably plot some of those people in here. So those people that are frustrated or in denial, they may be the victims or the cynics, whereas at the right hand side, where people are at the integration stage, that's where you want your navigators to be. But the reason for showing this as well is to say that often we think about a change journey and say everyone's going to take this journey in the same way. Well, actually that's not the case, and some people may start in a far more positive frame of mind, but then may get some shocks through the ERP and say, oh, I didn't realize my job was going to change like that. I've been responsible for this for a long time, and now I'm not. And that can create some shock and some frustrations. And it's really important to recognize, okay, now I need to know that this stakeholder group or this individual, we need to manage them and take them on the journey and bring them back where we want them to be. So always think of these change journeys. They're not linear. People can jump around. And that's why things like people talk about stakeholder engagement it is continuous, and you need to constantly be assessing it to check that people are where you want them to be.